Hey, what's going on, guys? In this video, we're going to go over mine and Joe Holka's NFL DFS Week 5 picks. So we're going to start with Joe's picks first, and then I'll give out my picks afterwards. Let's go.
Thanks, Kev. Not sure if any of you guys checked out my week 4 high stakes review on my channel, but you'll know that it was a very close call. Could have been a massive week. I was about 3 yards short from Leonard Fournette from about a 15K score. Was still a good week overall, but definitely ready to move on to week 5. I'm going to give you guys 5 GPP picks per usual. Going to finish things off with a stack as well. So we're going to start at the quarterback position, and I've heard a lot of talk about Deshaun Watson, who we will get to. So he is pretty expensive. So if we did want to pay all the way up as kind of a natural price pivot, what about Lamar Jackson? I do think that they are at least an interesting one to go after. He doesn't have the best on-paper matchup by any means, but he has been one of the most efficient passers in the league. He's averaged the 3rd most fantasy points per attempt, 60 rushing yards per game. I definitely think that he has a really solid floor. I will say that Pittsburgh does have a decent kind of edge on him because they do play a lot of man coverage. So we know that at the quarterback position, we really want to target teams that play zone coverage. They have a little bit more room to run around. Part of the reason we didn't target quarterbacks like Josh Allen last year against the Patriots or against the Detroit Lions is just there's not enough room for them to kind of hit their ceiling from a rushing perspective. But I still think that Lamar can get it done through the air. Pittsburgh's really struggled with the deep ball. I have no problem with going back to him and Hollywood Brown. They just missed in the end zone last week. Another play that would have been great for my GPP team that was pretty high up in the 1500s. So I am willing to go back to Lamar Jackson, especially because I think at that price point, a lot of people are just going to play Deshaun Watson. So Lamar Jackson in tournaments. So on the subject of man coverage versus zone coverage, I do kind of want to hammer that point home with another game. So I think Kyler Murray is really interesting in tournaments because he's 6,300. He is significantly cheaper than Deshaun Watson, than Lamar Jackson. In the Cincinnati game that we expect there to be a ton of plays, you can probably project it for the most plays on the entire slate. If we're just looking at two teams that pass the ball a lot, both in the top 3, over 70% of their plays on the offensive side of the ball have been passing plays. So I do think that Kyler Murray in particular, so the Cincinnati team plays zone defense 70% of the time. So I do think that it's a similar matchup than what we saw him when he was facing the Carolina Panthers earlier this year when he kind of popped off for those 69 yards on the ground. So I think Kyler Murray at 6,300, if a lot of people are just going to focus on the passing options for Cincinnati, of which I'm sure we'll talk about, but Kyler Murray at 6,300 I think makes a really interesting GPP play at the quarterback position this week. My third pick for you guys is going to come at the running back position, and I'm going right back to Leonard Fournette, 6,400. You can make an argument that he's been seeing more work than any back in the entire league that's not named Christian McCaffrey this year. 48% team touch share. That's 4th among all players. Only 6 teams have run at a higher rate in neutral game script than the Jaguars as well. So I definitely don't think he's going to repeat that 200-yard day or anything like that, but I will say he's an early season touchdown regression candidate either. He hasn't scored yet. So, I mean, I think that Fournette at that price, that's the reason he's priced down there, right? Is because he hasn't scored. So on the road, not a great team total there, but in GPPs, is betting on that volume again is something that I'm willing to go back to for sure. And we know he's active in the passing game. That's one thing that he didn't really have under him last week, only 3 targets. But before that, I think I mentioned it on this channel before, 8 targets, 6 targets, 6 targets. He's still someone that is just seeing a lot of usage through the air. Definitely think that Carolina could get to the passer frequently as well. So that could just lead to some more dump offs for Fournette. So I think at 6,400 makes a fantastic pivot off of some of the other guys in that range that might be a little bit more popular. So my 4th pick for you guys in week 5 in GPPs is going to be Javon Wims. I think it's kind of getting different at the cheaper end of the spectrum at wide receiver makes a ton of sense this week. So if Taylor Gabriel doesn't play, I do think that Wims at 3,500 makes a lot of sense. He played 66 of 70 snaps as the kind of primary outside receiver. He did get 5 targets last week as well, and they were playing against the Vikings, a game that there wasn't a ton of plays overall. So Anthony Miller, he was limited to 43 snaps, and he was basically the slot guy. So I think that now that Gabriel is out, I definitely think that Wims could be the guy that would have the most upside in seeing kind of a usage bump here. I do think that Wims is a talented player. He's someone that's kind of balled out for us in preseason DFS the last couple years as well. So if you did want to kind of get a nice cheap stack, I do think that Chicago is squarely in play. Javon Wims and GPPs just gives you a ton of flexibility and then allows you to kind of get off of some of the other chalky plays like Odd and Tate at that salary range. All right, always want to wrap things up with a stack for you guys. I'm actually going to go to one of the highest team totals on the entire slate, and that's going to be the Philadelphia Eagles. So Carson Wentz to Alshon Jeffrey to Zach Ertz, and then I'm going to bring it back with Robbie Anderson. I could see bringing it back with someone like Jamison Crowder as well at 4,300. He's someone that's shown a pretty large target floor. I think the upside with Robbie Anderson, at some point, this guy's going to pop off. So he's the kind of low-owned, talented wide receiver you want to roll back your main stacks with. So I'm interested in that. I think game script will be in his favor. But Carson Wentz doesn't have the kind of rushing upside that I typically target at the quarterback position, but we do know that team total is just massively important. And I think his weapons and the target share there is condensed enough, but this one still makes a ton of sense. He's shown a lot of chemistry with Alshon in the past. Now that we have him back from injury, I think that things will kind of open up for this offense. And then I mentioned Zach Ertz. I think that you can kind of give him one of the more secure roles in the entire NFL at the tight end position, which is extremely valuable. He's run more routes than anyone outside of Evan Ingram and Austin Hooper. At 6K, I think that a lot of people kind of will be paying down this week for Tyler Eifert at 3,300. So paying up to be contrarian for Zach Ertz, but also kind of giving you a lower owned stack, I think could work out this week. That's going to do it for me in week 5. If you guys are looking for more DFS or betting content, definitely check out my YouTube channel as well. Kev's going to throw a link in the description. I do go live every Sunday morning at 11:30 Eastern time on Twitch. So twitch.tv/JoeHolka if you want to jump into that Q&A. Make sure you follow me on Instagram. I throw out my top 5 picks at every position over there on Saturdays, and I'll see you guys next week.
Thanks for those picks, Joe. I've got my 2 picks written down on this piece of paper. I'm just going to go over them quickly. So I've got quarterback Marcus Mariota, 4,900 this week on DraftKings. Again, I would play these players on FanDuel if you play there as well. I'm just going to list the DraftKings pricing. So he's 4,900, really cheap. I'm looking for some cheap quarterback and defense and tight ends this week because I do want to spend some money on running backs and wide receivers. There's lots of players in good spots there. So to go cheap this week, I like Marcus Mariota at 4,900 for GPPs. Definitely a risky play. He's playing Buffalo at home. So he is at home, which I like, but he is facing one of the toughest pass defenses or toughest overall defenses in the league. But at that price, I still like him. They have an implied team total of 21.3 points, so they are expected to score a little bit, even though it is a low total in that game. Mariota has topped 18 DraftKings points in 3 of his 4 games, and he's been pretty efficient in the red zone. So if they do get in the red zone, he could score a couple touchdowns. I think he has 3 touchdowns in 2 of his 4 games. So overall, again, risky play, but at 4,900, if you want to spend up at running back and receiver, you're going to have to go cheap at quarterback, and that's who I like this week. Next up here is wide receiver Will Fuller for the Texans, 4,500 this week. He's a guy that I think a lot of people have been playing this year. He hasn't really had a breakout week, but I think this could be the week, and his price is very good at 4,500 in my opinion. The Texans have the 3rd highest team total. Will Fuller is 15th in air yards, so he's getting a lot of deep looks. He's seen 6 or more targets in his last 3 games. So overall, he's getting a lot of looks. He just hasn't had that big game. I think this is going to be the week against Atlanta. So I like Will Fuller at 4,500. I like him for cash and GPPs. So Marcus Mariota, 4,900. Will Fuller, 4,500. Those are my 2 picks for this week. Hopefully you guys win some money this week. If you enjoyed this video, smash the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Good luck this week. Talk to you guys later.